Saturday Motorsport with Lester Forbes on Motorsport Radio.
Hi, it's Seb Ogier. This is Manuel Maldonado.
Hi, I'm Ash Sutton. Hi, I'm Michael O'Brien, and this is Motorsport Radio.
Hello and welcome. It's Motorsport Radio and we are live on a Tuesday evening. Wow, yes, tonight on the show we will be looking back at everything that happened in Paris at the weekend. It was the first ever time that the ABB FIA Formula E Championship was streamed officially live here on Motorsport Radio, and we will be talking all about it, telling you what happened and how it affects the various championships. And also something called Formula One, taking a bit of a beating in its reputation recently for being not as good as Formula E, let's say. But we'll try and inject some energy and enthusiasm and passion into it, even though it's not quite as good as Formula E. But we'll have to do what we can. So we will be talking a bit about Formula One later in the show and taking your opinions and thoughts all about it, because we are live. It's a perfect opportunity to get in touch with us this evening. You can contact us directly in the studio tonight. It's at M Sport Radio on Twitter, Motorsport Radio on the Facebooks, and we're also streaming on Single Seaters at Single Seaters on Twitter, and loads of other places as well, which I've mostly forgot. Oh, and we're on Twitch as well, Motorsport Radio. Yeah, loads of places basically. And please welcome onto Motorsport Radio, making their debuts on Motorsport Radio tonight. Please welcome, amongst others, Connor Jackson, our returning champion and website editor, and also Charlie Andrews as well, I don't know, with the all-round motorsport expert, amongst other things. Wasn't sure what to call you then.
Thank you.
And please welcome Bethany Waring. Hello, Beth.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Well, that's good. Good to know. Beth was at Donington at overseeing various events, which may or may not be touring car related. Not really sure, unless anybody really wants to talk about it, that we have enough time to actually talk about it this evening. So we might sweep that one under the rug for another time, just because there's so much to talk about in Formula E. And also, please welcome, making his Motorsport Radio / Monday Motorsport debut, the much talked about, often rumoured to be an alter ego of Connor Jackson. It is Formula One reporter / touring car / Formula E / all-round opinionated guy from up north. It's Nigel Chew. Hi, Nigel.
Good evening, Lester.
So, wow, I'm almost speechless that we've actually got you on a live show. Thank you anyway for coming
on. About 18 months, hasn't it?
Yes, it's taken me literally just as long as it took me to get Connor to be the website editor to come on. So yeah, you're all welcome, Beth, Nigel, Charlie, and Connor. And I've run out of boxes now. I'm gonna have to sort of improvise as well with various boxes and things flashing around. So tonight, then, it will be mostly dominated by Formula E talk, I have to say, because it was incident packed, let's say, and we will be talking about Formula One in the second half of the show. But Formula E, interesting one at the weekend. Motorsport Radio, for the first time ever, had official live radio coverage right here on the platform, and hopefully that will be a thing that will be continuing into the next E-Prix. Keep an eye out on social media for news about that. But on to the actual Saturday event itself. Connor, you, I'm going to say, watched all of the coverage?
Yes.
That's handy. That's good. So yes, there was. It was rumoured that it was going to be a bit rainy in quali at some point on the Saturday. It didn't come till later in the day, but overall. Qualifying performances, who stood out for you?
Well, if we're talking quality performances, we have to say the Mahindra boys. Verline himself got pole position, and Jerome D'Ambrosio was in sixth. Although a note for D'Ambrosio, actually, he came into this round as the championship leader, and as anyone who's familiar with Formula E will know, the championship leaders all start in Group 1, which is the first group out on track in qualifying, and thus is the slowest group because they have to clear the most debris from the track, and the track is slowest, not rubbed in, etc., etc. Anyone who knows motorsport gets the gist of where I'm going with this. As a result, no driver from Group 1 has managed to qualify in the top 10 this season, which is why we've always seen the championship contenders right down at the back. So for him to have made it all the way to Super Pole was actually an incredible achievement. The only problem with this, and for teammate Verline, who did get the eventual pole, was that it turned out to be an illegal car for both of them, with both cars having under-pressured tyres. Now, I don't know about you, and maybe Charlie can inform me on perhaps more specifics when it comes to Formula E styles, but surely an underinflated tyre would be more of a disadvantage than an advantage.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I was quite surprised when I heard the news. Obviously, like you said, fantastic performance by the team. Obviously, delighted for them. Nice to see Pascal, bit of a Formula One bridesmaid, actually having some really, really good results in Formula E. Obviously, that's what a lot of the fans are really looking forward to seeing from him. A few more performances like that would be fantastic. But yeah, kind of like you said, I was quite surprised when I heard they'd been disqualified. I assumed it would be some kind of battery-related issue. I wasn't entirely sure what it would be, but I definitely didn't expect it to be that. It was quite a shock.
The teams in...
Yeah, go on, Nige.
Well, the teams in Formula E, they tried to make the tyre pressures as low as possible to maximise the speed. So then they're like often right on the limit of the tyre pressures. So I think the Mahindra just went like 0.2, 0.3 psi underneath, and that, even though it probably didn't gain any lap time, it does break the rules. So they had to be put at the back of the grid. But the teams are always on the limit with tyre pressures and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's certainly a strange one. Like you say, Connor, just going back to what you said, it surely might have been otherwise seen as being a bit of an advantage, having low tyre pressures. I don't want to get into the technical details of how much PSI is legal versus something else, but obviously, well, it was deemed that that they might have got an advantage from having the... but anyway, yeah, Pascal Wehrlein was stripped of his pole position due to a tyre pressure infringement, and that means that Oliver Rowland inherited the pole position. And, yeah, am I right in saying it would be his first pole position, wouldn't it?
No, this was his second pole in
That's
3
what I
races,
said, his second pole position in a few races.
Exactly, but it's a rare change and upset to the season, as it were, because he's the first driver to get a second pole. As anyone who knows about Formula E, we've had 7 winners from 7 races, and obviously now we've had 8 winners from 8 races. But the other thing we had was also 7 pole sitters, and sadly Rowland did bring this run of form to an end, as it were. And I'm sure I can sarcastically make a comment of, oh, Formula E is getting boring now, they've had a repeat pole sitter. But Rowland himself has more than deserved that, let's say. He's certainly been putting in the quick one-lap pace, and if Sanya was anything to go by, he certainly deserves a shot at victory. But yeah, let's say that while qualifying did go really well for the Nissans, being Rowland on pole and teammate Buemi in second, it didn't go so well for the race, did it, Lester?
Definitely not. No, because yeah, moving on to the actual race itself, and well, I think we're going to have to just take our time on this one, trying to sort of dissect it and maybe go sort of almost lap by lap, because I have notes, guys. I am fully prepared for this week, definitely, because Rowland obviously led from the front, and it was a safety car start, as it was deemed to be a bit wet on the start. Well, one half of the grid was deemed to be a bit damp, I think. I don't know if it was damp. They were there, I weren't, so we'll have to trust their decisions on that. But the decision, Charlie, for you to start behind the safety car, which is always seems to traditionally to kickstart a race as being a bit of a damp squib, the right decision for you, was that?
I can't say. I'm not part of the technical safety team. All I can say is that I think if that was what they initially thought was wet, I think they would probably have loved the whole race to have been like that. After obviously what we saw kick off with about half an hour left of the race, that what did
Ironic, isn't
occur was incredible. Yeah, obviously, as we know, it was the first ever Formula E race to be held in what was obviously initially damp conditions and turned into a flood. Basically, it was pretty heavy, that rain. At one point I think they were hailing as well. It was hailing, which must have been horrendous for the guys. And please don't ask me who did and didn't finish the race, because as soon as that rain fell, I completely lost track of what was going on. It was ridiculous.
It did get a bit certainly hectic, Nigel, but the decision to start the race behind the safety car, just like Charlie says, considering it wasn't actually raining, even though it was a bit damp, and considering that it was almost sort of powerboat conditions further on in the race, do you think it was maybe the right call for the officials?
Yeah, I think it was the right call, because one half the grid was wet, one half the grid was dry, so the drivers starting on the left-hand side would have had a much better start than the drivers on the right-hand side, and then you'd have drivers at different speeds going in towards turn one, which might have been a bit unsafe. I think in Rome last time it was a little bit damp as well, but they did start normally, and one half of the grid got a much better start than the other, so I think it was a right call, just to make things fair, really, for the competition.
And Beth, I've not asked you because you were at Donington for most of the week doing your touring car type stuff, which I'll ask you in full what you exactly got up to if you care to tell us. But did you actually watch much of the Formula E?
Yeah, I watched it back. I was trying to follow at Donington, but obviously that wasn't easy. But then I think watching it back afterwards, it wasn't as hectic as trying to watch live tweets and things made it seem. In terms of whether it was the right call, I think if they hadn't made that call, you would have got 11 drivers complaining about it. They complain about anything anyway, but you would have got those 11 drivers on that side arguing that they should have been on the other side of the field, on the other side of the grid. And if it had been fully wet, it might not have been too bad, but because there was one side was dry and one side wasn't. But then it's just a continuation of one side's going to be more rubbered in than the other. So we weren't there, so we can't tell. But
exactly.
It made less people moan, so that's always nice.
I suppose, yes. Very, very diplomatic of you to basically, I mean, since it's your first show, I won't ask you to, stick your neck out and slag the officials off, because of course safety is paramount, especially in Formula E, where we went on to see the proceedings of basically a total crash fest, because as per my notes, as they say. It was kind of an uneventful first lap when we did start going green anyway, and not really much happened. I think people were just sort of tiptoeing and seeing what the conditions were, but it was Andre Lotterer who tried on the first move of the race, tried it on with tried to move on Mr. Gunther, and that was for 5th place at the time. And then I think it was lap 2 when Oliver Rowland, having inherited pole position, of course, his second pole so far, he crashed out of the lead. Unbelievable, Connor.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly his finest moment, and it would go on to not be Nissan's finest moment either. Rowland, perhaps unchallenged, let's say, is only really his teammate behind him, went over. And this is going to sound ridiculous for anyone who thinks they know motor racing, but he went over a bump in the track, he lost control of his car in doing so, couldn't slam on the brakes properly enough, whatever, and proceeded to plough straight into the oncoming barrier at the end of turn 9. That pretty much summed up his race. He would continue, albeit right at the back, and his day wouldn't get any better. Let's say, I don't mean to jump ahead too far in the race, but there was one particular incident for Rowland later on in which, at the same corner I will add, proceeded to outbrake himself into the corner while trying to overtake. Well, I don't think he was even trying to overtake. He was just trying to slow down for the corner and barreled into the side of Alexander Sims, which caused one of the many safety cars. So it's fair to say Roland, as a day, had an utterly torrid time. Yet, despite that, still managed to finish the race, which I'm surprised about. Moreover, he finished the race in 12th, which I think says even more about what happened to the rest of the field, to be honest.
Yes, you did skip past almost like every other point that we wanted to make, but we will go back.
I'm talking about Roland.
Yes.
So we'll go back to it lap by lap, as you say.
Well, not quite, but yes, incident by incident, certainly. And it was shocking to see, really, on lap 2. Anyway, Ollie Rowland and hitting a bump on the actual track itself, which, considering every circuit is a street course, then they're all kind of bumpy. There, Oliver. Don't want to, but we like Oliver Rowland. He's a good lad in general, I think. So not much criticism coming from me anyway, because I think he's local, is he? I can't remember where he lives now, but anyway, whatever. He crashed out the lead and messed it all up for himself. That meant that Sebastian Buemi was leading, with Robin Freins breathing down his neck after that happened. And it was Buemi who apparently went deep or outbraked himself, Charlie, and did a weird sort of cutting across the front of Freins' wing to apparently activate the attack mode in response to him running a bit deep. And that meant that he damaged Freins' wing for the rest of the race. So that was that was interesting.
Yeah, it was definitely a weird incident. I think, to start with, a lot of people thought that there was some damage, there was some issues with the car itself. So yeah, definitely a very weird issue there. But obviously it didn't, again, not to jump ahead too much, but obviously didn't create a completely undrivable car, because obviously, as you can see from the results beside me, Prince went on to do, pretty great things in that race. So I know, he did all right. Yeah, maybe like a 5 out of 10 for him. But he got out of the car and said, it was the hardest race of his life. So it was obviously a pretty difficult car to drive after damage, and then rain is not really what you want.
I was surprised, Beth, that move that he did, chopping across the front of Freins, to initiate the attack mode. If it wasn't for that attack mode, I think that he might have otherwise have got a bit of a penalty and would have got a slap on the wrist for making that move.
Yeah, I saw some people not complaining, but arguing that the placements of the attack modes were unsafe.
Clunky.
They're always in a difficult position for the drivers to get to. We saw in the race that a couple of the drivers, or at least one of the drivers, missed one of the activation zones. So they're always in an awkward place to get to. And I guess if you have somebody alongside you, then it's going to be even harder to get to. Would he have made that move if the attack mode wasn't there, or is that just the excuse he's used? I'm not sure.
Well, that's what I mean. If it wasn't for that attack mode, then he would surely have been accused of just sort of chopping across someone and making a dangerous manoeuvre, which it technically was, I think, personally speaking.
Yeah, but then at the same time, would he have gone all the way as he did if the attack mode wasn't there? But I don't, honestly. There were so many incidents in it. Would it have even been recognised, if that makes sense? Would it have been remembered?
I know what you mean. Yeah, there was so much going on, but that was one of the things that I noted, certainly as being a questionable, let's call it, questionable thing that happened.
Well, it was one of the moves that had a lasting impact. You could hear Freins' wing all the way through the race. So.
Yes. Definitely. Nigel, for you, that particular move, since I've asked everybody else, what do you make of that?
I think it was a recent incident. I think Buemi just went a little bit too deep on the brakes, and as you said, he cut back. But even if the attack mode wasn't on the right-hand side, I think Fred's don't have hit him, but I don't think it was anything too bad. It was just a little bit of contact. It's part of Formula E, it seems, these days. Yeah, I'm definitely racing into.
Fine, we will put that down as a racing incident and nothing more sinister than that, and move on to the next racing incident, I think, because there was definitely plenty, which is good, I suppose, because I've wrote plenty down about it. So yeah, the next thing that happened after that, apparently Buemi seemed to be in a bit of trouble. He slowed down or did something which made Robin Freins take the lead. Connor, did we ever find out why Buemi did slow down temporarily?
I don't think I looked exceptionally into this. However, it was car problems.
Generic.
What specific car problems it was, I'm sure someone can correct me in the comments later. But yeah, as you say, a couple of laps after the attack mode incident, Buemi just started to slow down. Freins overtook him into turn 7, I think it was, the short kink before the straight. And then everyone just seemed to pass him. Lotter passed him, then whoever was behind Lotter at the time, Abt, I think it was, Massa. And at the time, he just came into the pit lane, decided to end it there. In fairness to Buemi, he could have continued. He could have just limped around with his car and attempted to go as long as he could, but he didn't. He came into the pits, tried to sort it out, and he did go back out, but it would be some way back. Yeah. So it wasn't a good day for him, and I think that really put the nail in the Nissan coffin, because you could see the team principal just looking distraught, having seen both of your cars go from a 1-2 position to both of them out within the space of 4 laps. It's another bad weekend for a team that should still all have the personnel from when they had their Renault days and when they were winning the championship year on year.
Oh yeah,
they were the team to beat for 3 years, but suddenly Nissan take over from Renault, and they've sort of moved into a midfield nothingness, and when they do get an opportunity at the front, they're blowing it. Which they are. They're a shadow of the team they used to be, if we're talking about EDAMs. And it's not the direction I think Buemi or even Roland will be happy with. So I wouldn't be surprised to see either of them start demanding more or going elsewhere at the end of the year.
Beth, what would you make of what Connor just said?
Well, obviously the answer is that they need Nico Prost back. But,
more Nico Prost in any instance is usually a good thing, I think.
Well, their rally went disastrous this morning, apparently. But they were the Mercedes of Formula E, if that makes sense. They weren't necessarily running away with it in the same way Mercedes were in F1, but they were the team to beat, like Connor said. But then I think Techeetah really closed in. Audi, if they hadn't made some minor mistakes, would have been there or thereabouts a lot of the times. They just kept getting their cars disqualified. But then Nissan have really fallen back, and there is no explanation for it, because, like Connor said, most of the personnel are still there. They are, on the face of it, they are just missing 2 people who didn't really. I'm not saying Alan Prost didn't make much of an impact, but over the past couple of years, Nico probably didn't make as much of an impact, that the team's just nowhere without them. So it's perhaps it's just they've become complacent with what they have. They've been the team to beat, so they haven't had that innovation in the same way Audi and DS have.
Yeah,
I do see Beth's point. I'll retort slightly by saying that I think it does come down to funding ultimately. I see what you're saying about the innovation, and that's a very fair point actually. But with Nissan coming in, they're obviously not. I don't think they were spending as much as Renault did, and the team just haven't been able to develop the powertrain. I know there's been an awful lot of issues with this new Gen 2 car obviously coming in this year, and as a result, the team just hasn't adapted to this new generation, and it's all the same people behind the scenes. So it must clearly be something to do with, even if not the organisational structure, the funding they're getting, or the technology they have available to them, and that'll be the technology that Nissan have already in house. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they can come back to where they were. But right now, they're lucky to be ahead of Jaguar, and they're relatively very new to the series.
So what you're saying really is, Connor, is that they're fooked.
They're screwed for this year.
I
But
see.
I look forward to their return to the top. He says in a lovely tone.
Ultra diplomatic, as is always the case, is our website editor, Connor Jackson. And so moving on then to there's so much stuff that I wrote down. There was so much stuff happening. I was literally frantically trying to write down everything that happened and not failing kind of badly at it. But yeah, at one point, you might not remember, but Oliver Turvey and Tom Dillman seemed to be scrapping and barging and bumping into each other. That happened. There was no damage, I don't think, from it, but it was still a thing. And the fight for the lead was then between Robin Freins, with Buemi having dropped back for, quote, technical issues, or definitely not a driver issue. But yeah, the fight for the lead at that point then was between Robin Freins and Andre Lotterer. And Daniel Abt, do you remember he made he barged Felipe Massa, who was then in third place, somewhat further back. He barged him out of the way. Does anyone remember that? Beth? There was a lot going on, Charlie, I know, but...
I only remember it secondhand because I remember Massa had been my hero back when I started watching F1. I know, I'm a bit lame. And I remember thinking, I'm at Donington Park and he's going to take his first win since I started watching Motorsport, and this is not fair. And then he kind of disappeared. So part of me was like, well, at least I'm not going to miss this momentous occasion. And part of me was a bit disappointed. It kind of sucks for Venturi because it looked like it was going to be one of their best races, and that just didn't happen.
Yeah, I think I saw something coming into the weekend that suggested that it might have been Mahindra, I can't remember, but it might have been the usual PR spin that you PR people put on things to say so-and-so's definitely motivated for a great weekend ahead, and podiums just round the corner and all that sort of stuff. But I think it was either Mahindra or Venturi was bigging themselves up for that particular E-Prix. I
must admit though, it was there. It was literally there for Massa, and I was the same as Bethany. I was so excited to, hopefully see this legend of the sport up on the podium and, finally doing great things. I don't think some of his recent performances have really, justified him as a racing driver. I thought, this is it. This is the time. We're gonna start to see him. We're gonna start to see him perform how we want to see him perform, and it all just slipped away, unfortunately. But yeah, I think it was there for him. I don't know what it was down to. It was a crazy weekend. You could probably blame Santa Claus for what happened this weekend. I don't know. It was just such a crazy weekend, but it was there and it was ready for him, and it all just slipped away, unfortunately.
Well, one of the driver excuses that was put in, amongst other things, throughout the weekend by Felipe Massa, no less, was that he said that water was leaking into his visor, which caused him to spin at some point. Now, I think I might have missed the spin. I think it happened later in the race. I think it was just after a full course yellow, and he might have done a spin, and anyway, he carried on. But he was blaming water, and I thought maybe he needed the right visor.
I must admit, though, I'm not surprised when you.
Never mind.
Oh,
it's a joke. Sorry, carry on.
I ruined that one, didn't I? Sorry.
Go on, Charlie.
My joke came crashing down.
Sorry. I was going to say, I must admit, I'm not surprised that some of the guys blamed, some really minor technical issues, because these cars have never been out in the rain before. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't even think they've tested in the rain before. So it did lead me to question, are these machines actually built for the rain at all? Like, I don't know. Like, I can't imagine them particularly doing well, because they've never done it before. They haven't got that experience out in the wet. So things like visors and you know, flooding your car because the rain's filling your cockpit, it's not going to surprise me. Like I would fully expect that kind of thing to happen. They've never been out in those kind of conditions before.
Decent point, I suppose. Yeah, it's. I think they have actually done some sort of testing, at least. Maybe, I don't know. I'm well.
I can't imagine whatever they tested in would have been quite as torrential as what they had yesterday on Saturday. But
maybe Donington was the last proper full wet. I don't know, to be honest. I don't even follow Formula E testing, to be perfectly honest. So yeah. The weather conditions affecting Felipe Massa to an extent. And, well, talking about weather, just after Abt had barged Massa out of the way for P3, well, it started, what's the technical word for it? Pissing down. Definitely.
Keep it clean, Lester. But yes, it really started honking it down, didn't it?
Connor.
Yes, indeed. And the track quickly went within 4 laps from bone dry to complete hail in the end, as I think Charlie mentioned earlier. And yeah, it was a disaster for the drivers who'd had no idea what to do in the wet. I don't think we actually saw that many incidents, which I think was the surprising thing. In the period between the first full virtual safety car, or full course yellow, that's it. We're talking about Formula E, aren't we?
Yes.
But yeah, the time between the FCY and it starting, I don't think we actually saw that many drivers go off track. I think we might have seen 1 or 2 run wide, but it wasn't exceptional, let's say. Saying that, it's interesting that the cars didn't just completely slide off. As you said, we haven't had enough testing in this weather, so it's hard to say what the cars could adapt to. But I think we had some drivers complaining on the radio. I think Vern especially was complaining over the radio about the conditions before they eventually pulled out the flag.
Yeah, he does a lot of whinging, to be honest.
Yeah, but that's Jean-Eric Vern. But I won't say too much about that, but I'm sure. But no, it's interesting to see how the cars adapted, and after that, it was the case that Frines lost all of his lead that he had over Lotterer.
Let's ask Nigel what he just reacting to the what Connor said, Nige.
I think,
go on.
Yeah, so we saw some wet conditions in Hong Kong qualifying, so it's not the very first time that we've had wet conditions in Formula, but it is the first ever wet race.
Proper wet.
Finally, say after 53 races, and I'm just glad that they didn't red flag it, to be honest, because we often see in other motorsports like F1, they probably would have red flagged the race, and then we would have been waiting for like half an hour for them to clear it up. But they just kept the race going on the full course yellows, and there wasn't that much time on the full course yellow. Actually, we got back to green flag racing quite quickly. So I think the officials did a pretty good job, to be honest, on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think you're right in saying that it was a good decision. Maybe if a couple more people had have contacted with the barriers, let's say, then it might have tipped the balance of, because it did seem like there was quite a lot happening and it was just teetering. It wouldn't surprise me if the race director was heavily considering red flagging it.
Well, they didn't even put it on the safety car, to be honest. They just went straight to full course yellow, which means everyone goes around 50 miles an hour or something. So yeah, it was quite a bold decision, but it's good to see that they did that, because we always like to see the drivers right on the edge of things, and in the wet, that's when you see it the most, especially on the street circuit where you need to get punished for every single mistake, and there's paint everywhere on the white lines. So it was a proper driver's challenge, which was good to see, but I do think there was a little bit too much chaos, even for Formula E standards.
Connor Jackson enjoying your point there immensely. Sorry, Connor, we just got to you yawning.
Did you hear that? I'm very sorry.
No, it's fine. You make a fantastic point, and your opinions are well received, Nigel. Just they
honestly are. They honestly are, Nigel.
It was the full course yellow, not full. Yeah, full course yellow. I'm getting confused with IndyCar. Full course yellow. Anyway, so that was, I forget how long they were under that for, a few laps, not long, because the rain just passed. And we found out that Jerome D'Ambrosio was under investigation, Beth, for improper use of the attack mode. How can you improperly use that?
I'm not really sure, because
Because it's regulated by them, isn't it?
I don't know if... Obviously, I've never driven a Formula E car, but surely it's managed in the same way as like DRS is, so you can't use it unless you've... Like, the button just doesn't work if you haven't gone through all those things. Maybe he tried to activate it under... But you can activate it under safety car, you just can't go fast. So I don't know how he managed to do that, but it's pretty impressive in its own way.
What I assumed, I assume Charlie might have seen this as well, but what I assumed with the Jerome D'Ambrosio incident was I saw him activate it in the first lap, because he was at the back because of his disqualification. He activated it within the first lap, and it came up on the leaderboard as him doing it. And then the lap later, a message came up on the screen going attack mode activated.
Yeah.
So I was a bit sort of suspicious about the fact it just sort of activated the previous lap, and I was just thinking, oh, okay.
But that's going to get in trouble. Again, though, that's something that the officials are in charge of. So it's kind of up to them to press a button or flick a switch or program into the attack mode so that people don't activate it or try it too early. Surely, just a thought. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm sure the officials just need to test it out, but we'll see.
Exactly. Yeah.
I must admit though, it's not giving attack mode a very good rep. I know that a lot of fans are a little bit iffy about it still. I love it. I think it adds a brilliant element to the race, but I know that there are people that aren't necessarily as in love with it as other fans. So issues like this are not gonna do it any good.
I'm keen to avoid any criticism of said officials because they all doing a fantastic job, as we know. But like everything in motorsport, especially in Formula E at the moment, it is just still one massive big test because it's technology that's not really existed for more than a couple of years properly on this level, certainly. So everyone's still, I would say, without being too disrespectful to all the great companies involved, still somewhat finding their feet when it comes to said tech. I don't know. Anyway, so attack mode apparently improperly used, or so was under investigation anyway. And then actually came the hail, and then there was another, and then there was a full course yellow. Anyway, that happened. Green flag, and then Tom Dillman slaps the wall with Mitch Evans pitting for a new wing. And I didn't see exactly why. Maybe he had an incident with the wall as well. Did anybody see what happened with that?
Not with Evans. I know Dillman just ran wide because he was defending from Bird, but I don't know about Evans.
And then, talking about Bird, huge crash. I think Bird was involved. I'm not too sure. There was definitely like 6 cars that slid off the track. I think there was like a multiple of like 2 separate incidents which congregated together. Nigel, I think Sam Bird might have been involved, as was Gary Paffett, Oliver Rowland, and Alexander Sims as well, and a couple of other people who sort of rejoined the track, spun around and carried on as well. But yeah, big crash at one point. Not as much as in Rome, but still, big crash.
Yeah, I think a couple of cars went down the escape road, and then I think Massa hit someone, and then I think just like 6 cars like coincidentally went off at once, and I think Sam Bird was involved in that incident. And I think they put another full course straight back out after that. I think so much happened. Yeah,
it was. It seemed that there was struggling at one point to the officials to keep the race under a green flag for no fault of their own. But yeah, there was another, as you say, Nigel, another full course yellow. 13 minutes to go, and the positions were Robin Freins, Andre Lotterer, and Daniel Abt, who previously, as we mentioned, barged Massa out of the way for third place. And then came the incident, rather worryingly, or rather comically, depending on your view of Alex Lynn, when Eduardo Mortara apparently tried to overtake him on the inside, barged into a wall, ricocheted off Lynn, pushed him into the wall, and then shafted him, both causing a rather amusing incident, Connor.
Shafting him is certainly an interesting way to put it. I will say that. Mortara, for whatever reason, decided that that turn 5 would be an amazing overtaking opportunity. Where he got this idea, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, he went for quite a daring move up the inside of one of the sharp 90-degree turns, and proceeded to just sort of bump him and Lynn off into the wall. It was quite a dangerous incident, really. Obviously, I have to give Mortara the benefit of the doubt. I assume he had no brakes because he was on the wet part of the circuit and had come offline. But even so, the fact he came so tight to the inside, he sort of launched off the curb effectively, and launched Lynn and himself into the opposing barrier on the opposite side of the track. So it was a case of, is the racing getting too dangerous now? And this was the real sort of point. We've already had this big crash with, as we mentioned earlier, with Rowland and Bird and Sims and all that down at turn 9 where 6 cars went off. And then as we're back to green racing, well, I go, everything's going to be better now. Suddenly you see it all happen again with Mortara hitting off Lynn. And it's not as if these drivers are inexperienced. Mortara has obviously won the Hong Kong race. He knows what he's doing. Lynn's been doing this a couple of seasons as well, as has Mortara, to be honest. So these are drivers that know what they're doing, that they know these cars, and they know, in Mortara's case, they know them well. So to have...
Oh dear. Live from Norwich. It looks like we might have lost Mr. Connor there. I don't know why, but I'm only guessing that we've lost the connection to Norfolk. Although Charlie, you're in Norfolk as well, aren't you? So
not anymore. I was over the weekend, but not anymore.
Oh, okay. Apologies, my mistake.
No, it's fine. Norfolk born and bred. You can never offend me with that.
Oh, okay, excellent. So while we try and re-establish communications with Mr. Connor, we'll just carry on, I suppose. So Beth, Connor mentioned just before he was brutally cut down in his prime that Formula E might be potentially, according to not us here at Motorsport Radio, but might be possibly inviting the question, is Formula E getting a little bit too dangerous? Are there just a bit too many risky manoeuvres being launched?
Hasn't it always been like this? So I'm like, the very first race, it was throwing your car at another driver to stop them getting the win. It's always been a bit mental. There's been they calm down for a bit, and then you'll have the odd race where, like Monaco in season 1, where the car goes flying. So, but there's been like 2 pile-ups now in the past 2 races. It's maybe not getting too dangerous, but there have recently been a few times where the detractors of Formula E will be able to point to it and go, this isn't proper racing. But then I was at Donington Park, and so maybe my levels of what's brutal racing have been higher after Gianettas and things like that. Yeah,
compared to what happened in Formula E, which is, albeit on a world stage, and is always going to, unfortunately, be compared with Formula 1. There did seem to be a lot of enthusiastic manoeuvres at Donington.
I do think that move from Mortara was very optimistic.
So diplomatic. I bet that's not what was said in the media room. Yeah, had I have been there, I might have been one of the people who were. Yes. Anyway.
Oh dear.
But you welcome.
I think, though,
Go on.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no. go on.
No, I was just going to say on the kind of the issue of Formula E maybe being a bit too dangerous. I think you've got one, in my opinion, quite simple explanation. You've got fat cars in tiny street circuits. At the end of the day, is it not just as simple as that? If they want less crashes, if they want a little bit more safety, then put them on Silverstone, put them on, proper purpose-built racetracks. Don't necessarily squeeze them around the streets of Paris. I don't know.
It's like Nigel trying to go racing in a go-kart around your kitchen.
Well, I think Paris is one of the tightest circuits of the year, to be fair. It's like, I think only Monaco, maybe Hong Kong are tighter. So, I think it's a bit harsh to say it's too dangerous for racing because, well, at least they can race. And so obviously, it's like the fact it might seem dangerous and there's lots of incidents because they're all nose to tail with each other. So, yeah, I definitely wouldn't say it's too dangerous. I think it's very entertaining.
Very entertaining. There we go. Connor Jackson put in his place. Definitely, Formula E is not in any way getting too dangerous. It started off pretty spectacular with, as Beth was mentioning, cars flying in the air and being thrown around all over. And if you compare that race number one to what happened on Saturday, yeah, not too bad, I suppose. But yeah, definitely Mortara. I think are we all in agreement? Maybe he was a bit of a silly Billy for at least trying such a optimistic overtake.
Yes, slap wrist for Mortara, I think.
Yes, and kick up the arse. So, right, on we go with other things that happened. Yeah, wow, where my list of things that happened? I'm still going through it. I've lost my place now. There were that many things that happened. So, yes, Mortara did a thing, and Lynn went into the wall. Turvey and Massa, did I mention that earlier, previously? Oh, Turvey back in the wars, this time with Massa. I think someone else mentioned this earlier. They crashed or took each other down a recovery road. Both recovered anyway. But Turvey got out of shape and basically walloped Massa. He was unusually an innocent victim. Was Massa taken out by Turvey. His second incident, seen by the cameras, is in as many laps. Beth, are you a fan of Oliver Turvey at all?
Oliver's lovely. Oliver has taken over my position as most lovely driver in Formula E, which inevitably means he'll be out at the end of next season, because that always seems to happen.
Well, there you go. You've cursed him now, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Oliver. But I can't say I remember the incident very well.
It wasn't
given that,
it wasn't one of the biggest.
Given that, it was probably more of a racing incident than Mortara.
Well, yeah, I mean, considering the conditions as well, it might have, I suppose, would have been chalked up to something like a racing incident. But, that happened. I think it might have brought out there was another full course yellow, and I forget what it was for, towards the end. Was it actually for that incident, Connor? Because there was a real danger of the race ending under a safety car or a full course yellow, wasn't there?
Yes, I believe the incident was Jerome D'Ambrosio's incident, actually.
Oh.
Yes, on one of the restarts, because it was quite soon after. Again, there were so many safety cars and full course yellows, you do kind of lose track about who's where. But after one of these particular stoppages, we all went racing again, and everyone's tyres were cold. And as you can imagine what happens when this happens, they all went down into the traditional turn one for the race start. And D'Ambrosio simply outbrakes himself. He went on straight on into the wall, and I believe someone was collected with him. It might have been one of the Venturis. I can't think who it was, but yes, basically he's That's fine. He slammed into the wall. Someone else slammed into the back of him, and oops, we have another blocked track yet again. And yeah, there was then the whole incident of how slow can Friends go under the virtual safety car so that they can get one more lap. And I think the conclusion was they ended up getting basically half a lap of green flag running, just so Friends could run.
Couple of corners, really.
Yeah, it was. It was literally just the back straight, and then the couple of corners before the weirdly placed finish line.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yes,
it was like on the apex of a corner, wasn't it?
It is. It's not the first time we've seen finish line. Obviously, not on a major straight in Formula E. They seem to be quite common to hide them away in some squirrely locations. But I think this is the first time they've done it on an actual seriously curved part of the track. And it certainly makes qualifying unique, because the cars basically have to position themselves differently depending on if they're starting or finishing the lap.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
So that's weird.
Definitely is. Right, so just before we get on to talking about other matters, not only in motorsport, i.e. Formula 1, but the rest of our Formula E review of what happened at the weekend, which includes, but is not limited to, incidents that happened on track as part of the official live coverage that was streamed live on Motorsport Radio for the first time ever, and we were absolutely delighted that official ABB FIA Formula E Championship coverage has come to Motorsport Radio. We are definitely all very, very happy about that, and we would like it to continue. So we'll be working hard to make sure it does as much as possible. I mean, we can't claim to be YouTube influencers or anything. Of course, Nigel is.
Speak for yourself.
But
Someone at work the other day called me an influencer.
is that how you that's the sound of influence right there.
That is the sound of influence.
Yeah. But anyway, yes, we were very delighted to have the official live radio coverage of the ABB FIA Formula E Championship on Motorsport Radio. And stay tuned to social media, and we will let you know. It's perfect. For example, Connor, if you're out and about, say doing a big long drive up and down the country, or just not in a place where you can actually sit and safely watch Formula E in all of its various platforms that it's on nowadays, then you can just pop Motorsport Radio on and listen to either live, Road to MotoGP coverage of Cool Fab Racing, which was also on at the weekend, or maybe even some live FIA ABB FIA Formula E World Championship action. Perfect example.
Yes, Lester. I will be honest, I'm a little sad you didn't get it one round earlier, because the Rome Prix, I famously remember I wasn't anywhere near a television. In fact, I wasn't anywhere near anywhere. I was driving. Well, I wasn't driving. No, I was being driven, I should say. And I wanted to watch the start of the Formula E race, but I had no way to do so because I was in the countryside, and as a result, internet connection was limited and wouldn't let me load the YouTube video to see the start of the race. So I missed the start of the Rome race because I didn't have any way to basically watch Formula E with low internet. So, how sad.
Exactly. And some might say you're even still limited now at home. With we
do not talk about the wonders of Norfolk internet, but there you go.
Exactly, the speed of the internet changes with the breeze, literally. You can anyway. It sounds like Charlie knows. Anyway, right. So, where was we up to? This is Motorsport Radio. My name is Lester, and yes, hello and welcome. We've got quite a lot of. People. It's usually like 2 or 3 people here, but we've got loads of people on the show tonight. We have making their Motorsport Radio debut on the show. It's Bethany Waring. Hello, good evening, Beth. And also Nigel Chew. Good to see you, Nigel Chew.
Yep.
Very modest. If he wrote as many words as he spoke, then he wouldn't write much, to be honest.
Well, I could go on a big rant, but I don't want to take up the whole show, Lester.
Save that for the second show. That's usually what people do. And not adverse to going on big rants, and rightly so in some cases, but not all the cases. Charlie Andrews, hello, good evening.
Thank you.
No one's ever complimented me on my rants before. Yes, and
let's just move on.
anyway, before she goes sort of off on one again, but they're always welcome, and Connor Jackson always diplomatic. Let's say the Motorsport Radio website editor.
I am always diplomatic, Lester, although I am opinionated and diplomatic at the same time.
Yes, I suppose you are. And hello all, welcome. This is Motorsport Radio. My name is Lester, and yes, we are in the midst of reviewing the ABB FIA Formula E Championship from the hashtag Paris Prix, and we'll continue next.
Monday Motorsport. With Lester Forbes on Motorsport Radio.
Hi, it's Seb Ogier. This is Manuel Maldonado.
Hi, I'm Ash Sutton. Hi, I'm Michael O'Brien, and this is Motorsport Radio.
Yes. So what were you doing at the weekend? Oh, really? Interesting. Probably should, knock that on the head. But if you were doing anything motorsport related, then you can get in touch with us and let us know, because we're nosy. Were you at Donington? Were you at Brands? Where were you? Doing anything at Silverstone? Were you part of the C1 24-hour? A record-breaking 99 cars entered, and I think finished, or 98 cars at least, which is the biggest ever finishing or amount of cars that finished a race in the country, maybe, possibly anywhere in Europe. I might have just made that up, but certainly it was a capacity grid at the weekend, or maybe you might have been over in Paris with the ABB FIA Formula E Championship. If you were, then that's good. If you were just watching it on TV, that's good too. So this is Motorsport Radio. My name is Lester, and we are still, amazingly, yes, we are still debriefing as to what exactly happened. We've talked roughly about all the incidents that happened in the race, but now we want your opinions, Connor Jackson. Yes, Connor, there we go. Connor Jackson, the Motorsport Radio website editor and part-time director of iRolling here at Motorsport Radio. we put him in charge. And yes, Charlie Andrews with us, and Nigel Chu. We've been waiting years to get Nigel on, something like 7 years now it's been, and today he makes his debut. And to Beth Waring as well from the I'm scared to sort of try and get through the list of the things that you publish on, Beth, but it's quite comprehensive. But I'll just say Beth from the Motorsport Network. Would that be accurate to say? Something. I couldn't actually hear you. Anyway. But anyway, yes. Hello and welcome. So yes, Formula E continuing, and yeah, thank you. Formula E, and well, there was a bit of news, I think, regarding this is after all the post-race nonsense, and apparently, Charlie, there's going to be mass penalties because of basically the crash fest that was the Paris EP, hashtag Paris EP. So that's coming up in Monaco, which is the next EP, and apparently everyone's going to be starting at the back.
So if everyone's starting at the back, who's starting at the front of the back?
If everyone is special, no one is type.
Maybe we should just have a big vote on it. I don't know.
If everyone's starting at the back, does that mean they don't have to complain about qualifying?
Good point.
Maybe they'll find something to complain about, like how much at the back they were compared to someone else who's also at the back, but in more of a advantageous position at the back. I don't know, but maybe. Apparently, yes, there is going to be mass Monaco penalties because of the E-Prix, and I suspect in their exasperation, the stewards just threw their hands up in the air, probably not, and said, "You know what? Everyone's getting a penalty, just like Oprah and the meme. You get a penalty, you get a penalty, you've got a penalty, and Nigel, you get a penalty as well." Don't know what for. Just cause.
You're always getting the penalties.
But yeah, so I suppose let's ask your thoughts on the overall E-Prix. I think that's fair to gain. I'll start with Connor Jackson. Always a good person to start with. Your overall thoughts on the E-Prix weekend, or if not, just the race.
The weekend was good. It was good. It was good to see them back in Paris. Hopefully, May long they continue in Paris. That I'm sure Lester will get onto with some news later on about politicians. But yes, I'm bringing you in for later, Lester. As for the race itself, Frein's amazing job. As he said before, it's his hardest race of his life, and it really showed. It's great to see him back at the top now, and as he leads Lotterer and Da Costa in the championship. But what I'm intrigued about is the rise of the second drivers. In previous years, where we've had these big fights at the top, we've known who the team leaders are. We've mentioned before with Renault Edams and how Buemi led that team. Sam Bird led the Virgin team for many years, De Grassi for the Audi. And these three have been the staple. Even D'Ambrosio, when he was a Dragon back in the day, led that team very successfully. But we're very much seeing a different sport this year, in the sense that the expected number twos are really making an impact. Freins and Lotterer, both 1 and 2 in the championship, many would have expected to come into the year as second fiddle drivers, and with 4 rounds and 5 races to go, I think this could really set up a good team dynamic. Bird himself, who we're talking about the Virgin team, gone 3 races without a point now. It's the first time in his Formula E career he's not scored a point in 3 races. Moreover,
and he was leading the championship, wasn't he? So.
He was leading the championship, exactly. But now his teammate is leading him by over a race distance. Freins could retire the next race, Bird could be absolutely perfect, and Freins would still have the lead with the teams, as it were. So as we come towards this end of the year, and it is going to be so tight in the championship, the teams that prioritise their drivers, I think, could have an advantage. I'm talking Virgin, I'm talking DS Techeetah with Lotterer and Verne, now that Lotterer has got the upper hand in the championship. Even Audi with De Grassi and Abt still both being in it. And this will be very interesting how these teams deal with their drivers now, I think, especially considering BMW with Da Costa and Mahindra with D'Ambrosio can prioritise those drivers, because they're the only ones in the team who can fight for the championship. So Paris is a big turning point for me. I really think it's very interesting to see how the championship's played out as a result. And while it's a great result for Freins and for Lotterer, I don't know how long their reign may continue.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting point you make about the alleged second fiddle drivers. I mean, I, of course, would never downgrade the likes of Daniel Apps, the brilliant Daniel Apps, to be in the role of a second driver. But, Beth, from your point of view, does Connor have a point? Is that dynamic of the traditionally the drivers who might have been asked to give way in the past, people like Daniel Abt, or maybe even like Robin Freins, for example, if Sam Bird might have been behind him, is that starting to be? Is it more of a free for all? I suppose.
I think, yeah, and I think the new qualifying format might have played into that. It reminded me a bit of the BTCC in the way that if you're successful, you're punished in a way. In touring cars, you get the ballast, but in Formula E, you get put in the worst position in qualifying. So nobody's been able to run away with it. You don't have 2 or 3 drivers at the top. And I know we've still got some races left, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. And I think that's why you've got we have 8 winners from 8 races, 7 pole sitters from 8 races, and why one team and one driver at each team hasn't been able to get there is because their teammate has an advantage over them as soon as they're ahead. Obviously, just because you're in Group 4 doesn't mean you're going to top qualifying, but it gives you an advantage that your teammate might not have if they're ahead of you. So we have seen, Daniel Abt last season started to shake off that second driver image in the same way that maybe other second drivers didn't, but it's definitely just is not there this year.
Yeah, certainly, and that's another good point. Certainly, in previous seasons, maybe or maybe before now, I think Beth, people like you say, Daniel Abt, who only finished like half a second really ahead of Di Grassi over the line on Saturday in the Paris E-Prix. I think usually Di Grassi might have been ordered, or Abt might have been ordered by his team to let Di Grassi through because he's been traditionally a bit more successful, that sort of thing. So I thought on a personal level, because I like Daniel Abt, he's a nice guy. Not to say Di Grassi isn't, but anyway, there's can I have my spade back, please? But yeah, it was good to see Daniel Abt on the podium and not being asked to do a Felipe Massa and move over, etc. So yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, it was good, and I don't think we're going to see it at least until until
What was that?
I have no idea. I don't think we'd see that at least until Di Grassi, if Di Grassi gets to the championship winning position and Abt doesn't. And I think Abt and Di Grassi are more evenly matched this year, so I don't see that happening.
Interesting. Anybody else, just because of time restrictions, anybody else have any opinions on that second driver debate? I see Charlie Andrews raising her hand rather expectantly. Hi there, Charlie. So yes, Connor made the point about second drivers being allowed to step up or stepping up or coming forward or finding their way through, etc. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say it's a fascinating point because actually, until Connor mentioned it, it wasn't really something I'd ever really thought about, the idea of kind of, these second drivers actually maybe getting results they shouldn't be getting compared to their teammates. And I think that's naturally because obviously we compare Formula E to Formula One. That's natural. That's, that's what everybody does. And I think to kind of go back on Bethany's point, I think that's one of the reasons why Formula E is so popular at the moment. You compare kind of the results in the season so far for Formula One compared to Formula E. Naturally, you're gonna kind of gravitate towards a series that's had 8 different winners in 8 races. That's just natural. Yeah. But I think as well, the dynamic of 2 teammates in Formula E is very different to the way it is in Formula One. Like, for example, Ferrari stating at the beginning of the season that Vettel was their number 1 driver. I couldn't even imagine that happening in Formula E. I can't imagine, one being actively given the number 1 spot. I just think it's a lot more of an even keel. Obviously, they're teammates; they want to beat each other. But at the end of the day,
wait till Mercedes come in proper in the future. So maybe that'll happen.
Well, there we go. But I just think it's a really different dynamic, which is why it wasn't really something that I'd ever thought about until Connor mentioned it. So it's a really interesting point.
Interesting, yes. Definitely an interesting point. Point well made, Mr. Connor. Thank you. I suppose I should also open the floor up to Nigel and anybody else who wants to chip in on that point as well, if you have any.
Yeah, I think thoughts. The championship is completely wide open. Probably half the field could still win it, because if you look at Eduardo Mortara down in 10th, if he has the perfect weekend, takes to win 25 points, pole position 3 points fastest lap, and another point. So if he gets 29 points the weekend, he shoots all the way back to the top of the standings. So he's down in 10th. Never mind everyone else had Sam Bird, Di Grassi, Abt, all those drivers. So it's just so wide open. I think it's a little bit too early to talk about number 2 drivers, because if you try to favour a driver and swap positions, well, you could end up in a situation where the number 2 driver actually ends up in the championship potential winning position, but at the end, you just don't know what's going to happen. And it's going to come down to consistency ultimately, because I mean, Lotterer hasn't won a race so far this season. Yeah, he's, I think, 2 points behind. You can see next to me. So we could end up with an amazing situation where the driver who wins the championship doesn't actually win a race. They just finish second, third, fourth, fifth. If you get those top 6, 7 results, and they'll end up winning the championship, which I think is a great thing. So it's not just about pure speed. It's not just about winning. It's about limiting your bad days in a way.
Yeah, it's consistency. Formula E has always relied massively on consistency of the drivers. So yeah, I think it's a really good thing for the sport to have that unpredictability.
If a driver, as Nigel suggests, might happen, wins the championship despite not winning a race, it's not totally uncommon in motorsport. I think someone might have done that in Formula One. Maybe you might have just made that up, but definitely it's happened before in touring cars in the BTCC before. But is it right? That's what we want to know. Is it right that somebody wins the championship? And we know how they would have won it because of the consistency and blah blah blah. But is it right, really, that they would have took the championship even though they wouldn't have won any at all, though, Connor?
Well, the championship's all about scoring as many points as possible. There's nothing to say you should take the most amount of wins. Look at De Grassi's Formula E victory back in season 3. That was Buemi won the most amount of races that season easily. Buemi should have won that championship long early in the season, but he took that one race off to go race in the World Endurance Championship. De Grassi took the advantage with his podiums in the New York race, and then you went to Montreal and suddenly Buemi didn't perform, and one weekend of not performing, and De Grassi takes that advantage. So no, I don't think it should be punished if we say Lotterer wins the championship and he hasn't won a race. That's just consistency. But it's interesting to see the drop off each driver has after winning a race. If you look at every race we've had this season, pretty much all of them have had a terrible race thereafter. Many of them don't score points. The ones that do, people like Jerome D'Ambrosio only scored 10th in his following race after winning. In fact, the only driver to have scored a podium after winning a race this season is De Grassi, and that was Hong Kong after his surprise Mexico win.
Hard-fought Mexico win, not necessarily a surprise.
Exactly, but we are seeing these up and downs with the championship about who takes the momentum, and consistency is the only real form we're getting, which is why people like D'Ambrosio and Da Costa keep coming up in everyone's rhetoric about who's going to win the championship, because those are the only drivers we continue to see in the top 5 every single week. Everyone else just keeps fluctuating in and out.
Have you been on the stats again, Connor?
Mate, I am all over the stats right now.
I trust you always are, yes.
But no, it's this sort of up and down and giving teammates chance that a lot of the fans respect. I mean, even one of our viewers has nicely pointed in, saying glad Formula E aren't copying F1 in that respect. And yeah, it's a long post. He's welcome to read it. But yeah, it's people are much more understanding of Formula E's situation, and sure, they can accept it's not fair, let's say, but if it was fair, we'd end up like Formula One, where the best driver wins all the time, and we can say what we want about Formula One's consistency. We can say what we want about Formula One's consistency compared to Formula E's entertainment. Interesting.
Yes, you do make... I don't know, you seem to be on form tonight, Connor, making various interesting points. Also, by the way, I'd just like to mention, because we are definitely live, usually we do like to invite people to comment and take part in the show, disagree with nonsense that Connor or myself has said, and that sort of thing. We'd have a back and forth. The reason I don't want you to feel left out, the reason I've not done that so far, is just on a technical issue on my side in the studio, just because things are usually sort of I'm trying to make it look as though like the show is kind of put together and all smooth and it's nice and slick as possible, but underneath the cover there's like things happening and like if I open a browser then it's going to explode and stuff like that. So there's a couple of technical issues which mean I can't actually see any comments that come in, but thank you for leaving them. I will definitely read them after we've gone off air and even respond to them, and then we can have an argument. So that's why please don't be feeling neglected. Just wanted to mention that and put that out there. Talking about though, if we could, just because of time and stuff, and we've still got to talk about Formula 1. God and Bennett. The Formula E, the next E-Prix is on the 11th of May at Monaco, the Monaco E-Prix, and then it's over to Germany, and then it's the Swiss Grand Prix Swiss E-Prix. And then a double header ending the season in the United States. And is it next season? I believe it is that they're coming back to London for the E-Prix.
Yes.
I believe so, yes. So that should be definitely good. However, one potential future Paris mayor today has had a bit of a PR mayor. And he said that if he gets elected as the local mayor in Paris, this guy's name is Benjamin Griveaux. Benjamin, anyway, his name is. Sorry, Ben. Anyway, he's pledged to cancel the ABB FIA Formula E race if he is elected. And he also said in an article attributed to him that Formula E was or had thundering engines. So he's completely on the ball. He of course he knows exactly what he's talking about. And yes, thoughts, Charlie?
I know that obviously having a whole city shut down for a race is a logistical nightmare.
Well, it's not.
But at the end of the day,
city. It's a big city. I mean.
Well, probably a very important section of a very important city is obviously a logistical nightmare. But at the end of the day, this is cutting edge technology. It's futuristic. It's exciting. People are loving it. It's only ever going to draw people into your city. I think it's sadly a little bit blinkered, a little bit kind of short-sighted to instantly think, oh no, it's cars, it's racing, that's bad. It's nothing like we've ever seen before. It's green, it's electric, it's exciting, it's what we're going to have in our road cars one day. So I'm sad about the news, I really am. I think obviously Paris has proven to be a great race. So
well, it's just crossed. A proposal that this guy's put forward to say that if the Parisians elect him, then he'd look to scrap Formula E for some weird reason. I must admit,
I'd be interested to see if this affects the vote in any way.
Well, I mean, who's going to vote for him? To be honest, I mean, maybe the
not me.
But without straying too much into the local Paris politics, of which at the moment I'm told there is a lot, because many of the officials in Paris at the weekend decided to wear high-vis blue jackets. Just in case you were watching the politics and this stuff. Anyway.
Every week, Lester. What did I say?
Nigel, are you concerned at all about this potential new mayor of Paris threatening to close down the race?
Well, a few weeks ago, they just signed a 3-year contract with Paris, so you can tell that. You can just give that to him and tell him to go away.
Exactly, yes. Tell him to, yes, exactly. We should just literally all tell Mr. Benjamin, person who I can't pronounce the last name of, to politely go away, unless you have any extra words to add to that, Beth.
I think
clean words.
Part of me just doesn't want to worry about it because obviously he's not elected and the people who have already been elected have been really supportive of it. But we saw it happen in Montreal. The new mayor came in and said, nobody likes this, please go away. And they spent a lot of money to make sure Formula E went away. So, and I live in London, so I kind of know a little bit about what it is like when you can't get to work because somebody decided that they're going to close the roads. So I sympathise with Parisians who might not like their roads getting closed, but on the other hand, it does bring in tourists. It's been packed every time I've been there, so it'd be interesting to see. I don't know this mayor's other policies, but it'll be interesting.
Potential new mayor. He's not actually. I don't think he has any power
Potential new mayor's other policies. So it'll be interesting to see if Formula E is actually a big part of it, or if it's just something we've heard because we care about motorsport, rather than, I don't know, pigeon droppings or whatever else they care about. In fact.
Okay.
And you thought I was controversial, Connor. There you go. No.
I didn't.
Everyone's entitled to their opinion, unless at which point they're not. So there you go. Yes. Shall we move on before we have to dig ourselves out of various holes?
Before the whole of France hates us.
Excellent. All right. So yes, moving on. The overall race, and I did touch up on it briefly before getting strayed into various other things. Let's give the actual race itself a rating, I think, out of 10. Really short. Keep it sweet. One-word answers. Connor, out of 10. The Paris E-Prix for you was?
An 8.
With 10 being the best of, I should have mentioned. So an 8.
An 8 is fine.
Okay. And Charlie?
7.
Beth?
7.
Nigel?
5.5.
Oh my God.
Ooh.
I've got to ask you. Why?
Well, it wasn't proper racing, was it?
Oh my God.
Yes, it was very entertaining, but I'd much rather see what we saw in Rome with two leaders going at it, like toe to toe.
Well, they did. They definitely
really.
did at parts.
Because a lot of it was not a lot of it was under full course, but.
I mean, the early stages of the race, Frines was breathing down Buemi's neck. That's the note I wrote.
Yeah, but in the midfield, it was just chaos, and one race like that season's not too bad, but I'd much rather see a clean, pure fight rather than a demolition derby.
I think you need to stay off them forums. To be honest, if that's anyway, no. Like I say, you're welcome to express an opinion. I did ask you your opinion.
You see my driver rating articles, yes, less than my F1.
And you can read the rest of Nigel's opinions on our website, motorsport.radio, of which he has many different opinions. We'll get to exactly what you're going to be writing about and getting off your chest later, Nigel. So I suppose from my own point of view, I watched the race earlier before we came on air because I couldn't watch it on Saturday. I would say 7. Maybe 7.5, something like that. Yeah.
I'm sounding really generous right now, aren't I?
What did you say, an 8?
I was an 8, the only one that said an 8.
Yeah, I mean there was nothing wrong with it. It was just potentially just a little bit interrupted, and there wasn't a smooth racing action, I suspect. Although some of the greatest races of all time in motorsport, not just Formula E and the E-Prix, some of the greatest races have been chaotic, rain-affected races. So yeah. So there we go. Just like the 2011 Canadian Grand Prix in Formula 1, where like Button came from the back.
4-hour race.
Yeah, the 4-hour race, and I think somebody, was it Nigel, might have rated that like one of the greatest ever Grand Prix ever or something like that. I forgot who wrote the article.
I don't think
someone did some.
That was in my top.
It was on your list. I remember editing it, but
there you go. And I vaguely remember reading it. So there we go. The system works, kids. Yeah. So anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, predictions on future E-Prix. Are we just like crazy to even make any because of
I keep my bet as Da Costa for eventual champion at the end of the season that I made back in Marrakesh or something ridiculous.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. No one remembers whatever I say. On
Oh
this
yeah,
show,
no, I remember your was it an article or something? Yeah, I remember it.
But yeah, there you go.
Okay. Yeah, we only don't remember just because there was so much action and stuff that happened. Something that you maybe don't get with other Formulae. Just saying. Just remind us then, Charlie, on who you put for your champion. I think might be a fairer question.
I didn't. I wasn't. I made my Formula 1 prediction. I did not make my Formula E prediction.
Would you care to make one?
Oh.
Is that too much pressure to put you under?
I genuinely can't. I've got no idea. I think the only prediction that I will make is race number 9 will be the first repeat winner. I don't think we're going to have nine winners from 9 races, unfortunately. That's the only prediction I'm going to make.
That's a good prediction, to be honest.
Come on, Lotta.
Yeah, if you're not aware, many people are, that there have now been 8 different winners from 8 different races. And I think we're all just looking and expecting there to either be a 9th different winner or not. So it just adds a bit of a different dimension. But Beth, who did you put down as champion at the start of this season? And if nobody, then would you like to pick someone?
I don't think I picked... at the very, very start of the season, before any of the races, I said that Verne was going to be the first double champion. Ooh. Now, I wouldn't rule him out, but I'd have D'Ambrosio, I think, is going to take the championship. He's had that consistency. Even when he hasn't been winning, he's managed to stay towards the top end of the championship the entire time. So D'Ambrosio.
Interesting. And Nigel, for you, who's going to be the champion?
Yeah, I would actually agree. D'Ambrosio's actually pretty unlucky, not only just in Paris, because if he started at the front, he could have got a big amount of points, but just to be different. I'll go with Lucas Di Grassi. I think he's really good when the pressure moments go up, and I think he'll win another race this season. But we'll go down to the final, so we'll see. I'll go with.
Well, I hope it does. I think we all hope it does go down to the final curtain in the ABB FIA Formula E Championship. And hopefully you can listen to the remainder of the season all live with official live radio coverage live on Motorsport Radio Live. Which we would all definitely love to do, because as great and amazing as the TV coverage is, of course, we all have lives, and not everybody can be in front of a TV or be able to watch on your phone or your device live streaming. Sorry, bit my tongue then. Yes, not everybody can watch all of that all live, which is why, Connor, it's great to take a radio with you, as you mentioned earlier, when you were stuck in a field for some unknown reason. Yes. You were itching for some ABB FIA Formula E radio action. Well, now you can stay with Motorsport Radio all day and listen to not only some live championship action from the ABB Formula E Championship, but also when they're not on there, you can be treated to some great interviews and some of our historical archives, and also a couple of nice tunes as well. It's a 24/7 radio stream, and that's the entire basis of Motorsport Radio. So pitch done. Tune in. Motorsport.radio. Place to be. Right, should we talk about some Formula 1 next, or should we talk about some touring cars? Because there was lots of both to talk about. I think just taking the general temperature of the room, I think maybe we should do what we said we'd do at the start of the show, and just mostly focus. Time is really, really running away from us. But anyway, yes, let's go back and talk about some Formula 1, which is going to be next.
Monday Motorsport with Lester Forbes on Motorsport Radio.
Hi, it's Seb Ogier. This is Manuel Maldonado.
Hi, I'm Ash Sutton.
Hello, my name is Tiffany Dale, and this is Motorsport Radio on television. I don't understand that at all.
Oh, Tiff. You tinker. So it is Motorsport Radio. Hello and welcome. My name's Lester, and we are here talking about what happened in Azerbaijan in Formula One at the race at the weekend, I suppose. Not as much action, I would say, on track in the actual race as there was in Formula E, but maybe you'd like to disagree. And if you would, then you can get in touch with us. We are still definitely live, and we are definitely still able to at least read some of your comments. Definitely. It's at M Sport Radio on the Twitter, as Nigel prepares himself, gets himself in the mood for the Formula One chat. Always be on your guard, Nigel. Always be ready. It's like a coiled spring. So yes, it's at M Sport Radio on Twitter, Motorsport Radio on Facebook. We are on at Single Seaters on Twitter as well, and Twitch and YouTube and Spreaker, and of course Motorsport.radio, the only place to catch Motorsport Radio and official live ABB Formula E Championship radio coverage as well. So yes, with that being said, let's actually talk about some Formula One. And hello, good evening, and welcome, Formula One. So Connor, F1, yes. Did it delight? Did it excite? How do you feel about it?
It was a disappointment.
Oh.
Azerbaijan is traditionally a great race, and for the last couple of years it's been on the calendar. We've seen some really spectacular races at Azerbaijan, not just with the Formula One but also all of the support races as well. But it's been great coverage, and every year we've seen some sort of surprise result. Obviously people remember Stroll's first podium, Perez's random podium, Daniel Ricciardo's win. It's a race that throws up excitement. It's a race that should create some sort of tension, some sort of difference, because it's so easy to make a mistake, so easy to go into the wall, that you do, and you make mistakes and people benefit from it. But this year it was different, and I don't know if that's Formula One itself, or we've finally got enough data on the circuit to not crash every 5 minutes because you don't know what you're doing. But for whatever reason, this year did not live up to, I think, the Azerbaijan hype that we've seen in previous incarnations. It'd be great if we could go back to it, but hey, whatever. In terms of the race itself, as I'm sure others will go into detail in a bit, it was Bottas who won the race, winning from pole, but he was pushed all the way by teammate Hamilton after they almost got quite physical at the start. Hamilton and Bottas going side by side all the way up to turn 3. Wasn't that right, Charlie?
Yeah, it was a fantastic start from the Mercedes boys, and the lights went out, the race started, they had half a lap pretty much beside each other the whole way around, and I thought, here we go, Azerbaijan at its best. And then everything kind of settled down, and from there we had a relatively predictable race. Like you said, Hamilton was on the tail of Bottas for pretty much all of the race, which was good. It was exciting. We didn't have, a massive long, 10-15 second lead, which was brilliant. But it did end with Mercedes' fourth consecutive 1-2, which is a phenomenal achievement. I believe they're the first team to ever win a 1-2 at the first 4 races of the season, which it's a phenomenal achievement. They are unstoppable at the moment, and I think bright things to come from Mercedes this season. Unfortunately for some, and good for others. So
Nigel Chu, in his traditional online ramblings of being on Motorsport.radio, hi Nigel, has been a little bit crestfallen about the lack of variety within Formula One at the moment. For you, how did the Azerbaijan Grand Prix go?
Well, there was another pretty rubbish race, to be honest, but
don't sit on the fence. We'd just like to know how your thoughts.
Okay. I don't know what to say. For the first 4 races of this season, the top 5 drivers, it's been the same top 5 drivers, and Mercedes could get a 5th consecutive 1-2, which would equal the record that they set a couple of years ago. Ferrari did in 1952 and 2002 for consecutive 1-2s. And it's just, I think Sebastian Vettel said after the race, that it's just really bad for the sport. We need something to happen, and I know there's only been 4 races, but the constructors at the very least looks like it's over. The drivers, I think Vettel, maybe Leclerc can come back into it, but you just have to say well done to Mercedes. It's just such a slick operation. Toto Wolff, everyone back in the factory, done an amazing job, because to stay at the very top for 6 consecutive years takes some doing.
Well, they have had the rules on their side.
Well,
conveniently, they've been helping shape.
There's been 2 aerodynamic regulation changes in the last 3 years. They've stayed at the top. The one thing I would say that has favoured Mercedes is the tyres, and I don't want to get too technical, but there's a very small operating window with the tyres this year, well, the last couple of years really, and for some reason it does favour Mercedes, and I'm not sure why. Maybe they're better with the tyres, whatever. But that, even say they're over a second behind in practice, they just claw it back in qualifying, they lock out the front row and just drive away. So Ferrari will need to do something absolutely unbelievable to get back into it, really.
Yeah, I think that's one of my biggest frustrations this season so far is the lack of pace that Mercedes like to show on a Friday, and then all of a sudden Saturday it's over, it's done.
Don't they?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I kind of get why they do it, but I also think it's incredibly frustrating, particularly at Baku. You know, we had Leclerc essentially on track for a pole position. Hopefully, you know, that might have still been the case had it not been for the incident that he had at the end of Q2. But, you know, Mercedes still had that dominant pace, and I just think it's getting a little bit boring now. Everybody finishes a Friday thinking, oh my God, maybe this is the race. This is the race where Mercedes won't win. And then they win, and you just think it's just a little bit boring now.
Okay, that's one opinion. Beth, Nigel seems to have a bit of a dystopian outlook on how Formula One is proceeding at the moment. Do you share his scepticism and depression about Formula One?
I mean, I do worry because we have had the standings don't lie. Mercedes are dominating, which is good for my fantasy team because they're the only good bit about it. But we have had some exciting races. Australia was quite good. Bahrain was quite good. So hopefully, I don't remember them, but I remember them being good. So hopefully this is just a dip, and we'll be back to some actual action soon. There are still some. Then it might be that the A class we can write off as just a Mercedes, but it's the B championship is still really exciting. Everyone keeps.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the midfield fight?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know who's top there. I've got the standings, so I can see who's at the top, but you don't know going into a race whether it's going to be Racing Point or Haas or McLaren or even maybe Renault if they don't crash. So it might be a case of, again, that the top of the championship's a bit of a write-off, but we will have some good battles in the midfield, which is where it really counts for teams fighting for survival, fighting for that championship money.
Interesting. I'm sensing from everybody on the panel that situations getting a little bit desperate in F1 at the moment, with the lack of new winners, something that I always personally judge a championship's health on, whether there's people who are winning races who have never won a race before, something that almost happened the other week with Leclerc but didn't for reasons we already know. But generally, yeah, the last new winner in a Formula One race, I think, was Max Verstappen? No, might have been Valtteri Bottas.
It was Bottas. Bottas joined Mercedes after Verstappen did Spain.
That was a long time ago.
It doesn't feel like it, but it was.
Yeah. And although we got nothing, I've got nothing against any of the drivers, Bottas or any new winners of new races this decade. It, like I say, it does correlate to how healthy a championship is deemed to be. Might not be the only determining factor, obviously, like attendance figures on the gate, TV viewers, global audience figures, but also I think in that mix is there's usually if you were to draw a line, for example, all the way through, if you was to sort of chart all those different things that I just mentioned, and also included in there how many new winners of a Grand Prix there were in any decade, I think you would generally see the same sort of level. And that is just one indicator. I'm not saying it's the only thing. It's obviously a massive job that Liberty have still got to do to potentially turn things around. I do not want to get into what do Formula One need to do to change all that sort of thing. But it seems to be the conversation that we're having every single week.
Yeah, I must. One of the saving graces, I think, for the season this year will be Bottas version 2. I think, if he can create a title fight with Hamilton this year, I think he will be our saving grace. We may not have different winners, but fingers crossed we will have a championship fight. We won't have one person running away with it. He seems to have found his feet.
We have had a championship fight in the past few years, and I think a lot of people just act a bit blasé about it because it's the same team who's been in that exclusive championship fight, in an internal championship fight, really, and it's happening again.
But we talk about, you say that the amount of winners is what makes a championship. But do you think people talk about the glory days of McLaren in the 80s, and McLaren dominated the championship and they broke records and
it was boring when they were dominating.
But everyone talks about how great it is, so maybe we're talking about how awful Mercedes domination is now, but in 20 years' time, everyone will be talking about how great it was to see Hamilton's glory days. But
I think it's a real bit. Sorry, Connor. I think it's a real bittersweet scenario in the fact that we can step back and know that we're witnessing F1 history, we're witnessing greatness, but at the same time, we don't want to see that. We want to see some battles. We want to see some fights. So I think it's a bittersweet scenario.
Nigel, your thoughts? Sorry, Connor.
No, you're fine.
Well, I think with the McLaren in the 1988 and 1989, that was, 3 seasons, whereas Mercedes now is 6, which is quite astonishing.
That's a good point.
With McLaren, you had 2 drivers, Alan Prost and Ayrton Senna, who were 2 of the greatest drivers of all time. I think even in those days, they would have been regarded as incredible. Whereas now, Bottas versus Hamilton. Now, I don't want to sound like Mr. Miserable here, but I really don't think Bottas has been any better than he was last year. He's just been less unlucky, really. If you look back at last year, he was really unlucky at the start of the season in China and in Baku. He suffered a punch and was unlucky with the safety car in those races. So he would have looked much better last year. Whereas this year he's just not had that bad luck, which is why he's leading the championship. And Hamilton knows he'll beat Bottas in the long run. But, yeah.
Interesting. Connor.
Yeah, Hamilton's complete lack of concern, let's say, over Bottas this season has been interesting. When Rosberg was really challenging Hamilton throughout 2015, 2016, there was definitely a sense of concern from Hamilton. Because he knew there was someone who was challenging him straight up. But with Bottas, we've got Hamilton losing the championship by a single point, and he seems relatively unfazed by it, as if it's like, yeah, all right, this is fine, we'll let him have his glory days, wait till I get to Europe type attitude. Which is why everyone's a bit sort of cautiously optimistic with Bottas, because it's like, he could make an interesting championship fight, or Hamilton could just be getting the consistent points until he knows he can get to circuits he's really strong at and just dominate. But that's how it is. In terms of the comparison to the 1980s, I do see where people are coming from with that. But obviously you still had unfortunate incidents with races. Cars were a lot less reliable, so going out was obviously a lot more common.
The winning margins as well, sorry to interrupt, but I think a lot of people forget the 80s were definitely not glory days. The winning margins were sometimes like 50 odd seconds. If that happened tomorrow in another F1 race, we'd all be like on like just editing myself to not say something inappropriate, but it would be a disaster for the championship if those types of results happened again.
Yeah, but those gaps were more easily brought up. The other thing with the 1980s, 1990s comparison was the fact the cars were a lot more open. The idea that there was 7 seconds between the top car and the bottom car wasn't completely unheard of. That's why we had pre-qualifying back in the day.
Should bring that back.
But you don't see that now. Even if we can joke as much as we want about the Williams situation, even their gap compared to Mercedes is tiny compared to what it has been in the past. But that's only because we're only measuring stuff in 0.3, 0.4 of a second. Qualifying comes down to tenths of a second now, and while I'm saying that didn't happen in the past, during the races, the gaps, as you say, would spread out loads because the cars would have such radically different paces at different times of the race. And they've tried to introduce that with the tyre formats, with Pirelli, with its degrading tyres. But teams got on top of that now. There is such money, such influence behind these F1 cars now that they are not, they're not unpredictable. The idea that this is a sport per se, and this is, again, Connor's controversial opinions, but the idea that this is a sport in the sense of it's really unpredictable is really gone. It is just a showcase, as it were, for these top manufacturers to show off the best of their technology. Think of the amount of mechanical errors Mercedes or even Ferrari, for that matter, have had over the last couple of seasons. It's negligible, and they don't determine championships anymore in the way they did. And it comes back to, I think, something one of the fans said on the Facebook feed, Blake Gibbons, where it's about bringing in a budget cap. And this is what Formula One needs to decide for itself. Do we value this type of racing? Do we value the idea of close teams, close manufacturers competing with each other like we're seeing in Formula E? In which case we need a budget cap. We need some way of restricting the top teams from just spending their way to success, which is what we've seen with Mercedes.
It's always been the case, though, forever.
Yeah, yes, but they have. But we've got to a stage now where the reliability is different. McLaren could have spent billions back in the 1980s, but the engine would have still failed during the mid-race. But since the Ferrari revolution of the early 2000s, which fixed the mechanical issue, there's no way the top drivers are going to retire just from a blown-up engine. So we need modern problems for modern solutions, to quote a meme. But yeah. Formula One needs to either decide whether it wants to just be about showcasing the best technology, the best talent, the absolute pinnacle of technology, or it wants to be the pinnacle of show class racing. And that's where a budget cap and the extent of that budget cap, I think, is very important for the state of the future of Formula One.
Interesting opinion, of which I think Nigel might have a response.
Well, I actually have to agree with Connor there about what he says about the budget cap. We do need one, but even if we do have one, will it make much of a difference? I'm not too sure. I'm just thinking, it's really not in a good place F1 at the moment, I don't think. And we talk about the 50-second margins in the 80s and 90s, but the reliability factor Connor talked about, we don't get that anymore, and that was part of Formula One back then, because he was thinking, would the leading car blow up or whatever?
The unpredictability.
Now that doesn't happen. But also, there's 21 races now, so the season's very long. So it almost drags on, and that's why with championships often have finished early in recent years because of 21 races. So it feels like the season's almost over, I guess, because it's hard to describe. We need the more amount of races makes the championship almost drag on.
Interesting. Yeah, some people have made that point when asked in various fan opinion questions and surveys and stuff. I think there was a really big questionnaire by the Motorsport Network, whatever, couple of years ago, just when Liberty had just taken over, and amongst other things like we want more Senna and Prost, etc., and harking back to the old days of the 80s and whatnot, there was some suggestions underneath the headlines which said similar things like what you just said, Nigel, that maybe the championship could be a bit smaller, maybe it's a bit of too much of a strain at the moment. Beth, on the people that work in Formula One at the moment, could that be a factor? Would F1 benefit from having fewer races?
Well, it would mean that if your engine blew in Bahrain, for example, that would have a much bigger impact on your championship. If you lose 25 points, if you lose a race win now, that's only 5 lots of 5 points. You could make that up in a quarter of the championship, a quarter of the season. Whereas if you had a 10 round calendar, then that's half the season of 5 rounds of finishing in sort of 5th or so that you would have to claw back just that one race win. So it'd be much harder if you had a shorter championship, and it would make the unreliability.
Yeah, you'd be punished a lot more for your mistakes and stuff. Yeah. Charlie, what do you think, just going on with that theme, maybe could F1 benefit from just little simple things like tweaking the calendar, having a few less races? But I don't know. What do you think?
It's a really difficult one, because obviously we want. It's like Conor was saying, it's the balance between being the pinnacle of technology, the height of technology, but then also being the pinnacle of sport and competition.
But that's more about tradition, though, isn't it?
Not necessarily. I think obviously part of going to new countries and racing in new cities is to be, at the forefront of what the sport is doing, and I think that is a really big part of Formula One. It is going into these new places and opening up the sport to, new corners of the world that maybe haven't been following it as closely as us Brits have, for example. I think it's part of the sport is going to those new places, building that new technology, and then taking it to places that maybe you've never seen cars so fast before. So it's difficult. I think as wonderful as a budget cap sounds, I purely can't see it ever being implemented in the sport. I really can't. I think there are certain teams at the top that would just never, ever say yes to that. So I think it's really difficult. And I think even if you do have such a budget cap, I think you're still going to have disparity, because you can't cut down Mercedes by half of their budget just so that Williams can be at the same point as them. I think you start to kind of tamper with, is that actually fair? It's a really difficult point. I think it sounds wonderful, but I can't ever see it being implemented. So I think that's why we need more formulas like Formula E, for example. Yeah, sorry, completely left my head then. That's why we need more formulas like that. Formula 2, Formula 3, to really be the pinnacle of where that competition is happening, so that then, the technology is in Formula 1, I guess. I don't know. It's a really difficult question.
Yeah. Well, let's not try and solve all of the issues with Formula 1 on tonight's show. Let's at least save some of it for the future. But Conor, you had a thought briefly.
I know what Beth was saying about you'll eventually just pull the manufacturers out. If you introduce the budget cap too low, then Mercedes, Ferrari will pull out. I suppose the comeback to that is so what?
Yeah.
I know we talk about tradition a lot of the time, with Formula One, and that's understandable. But with Formula E making such an impact, I know they're not competitors, but we know they are. Let's be honest. It's same as MotoGP is, the same as World Superbikes is. These are all motorsports that are dragging people's attention, and if you truly believe Formula One has that history and respect, that it could always come out on top compared to MotoGP, World Superbikes, etc., then surely you can take the risks to have a completely radical overhaul. Take the risk of, say, Mercedes, Ferrari going, all right, bye, see ya, and having a few lower manufacturers come in and develop a more competitive style of racing for a next generation of Formula One. It's not as if Formula One hasn't gone through these mini revolutions in the past. We've seen big manufacturers sort of take a larger portion of control in the 70s, the introduction of the live TV broadcasts in the late 70s after James Hunt's World Championship win, brought in a plethora of sponsors, and I know the tobacco industry really jumped on its back in that time. And obviously these were all obviously relevant issues at the time, but Formula One is evolving, and in this post-Bernie Ecclestone world, there does need to be some sort of evolvement. One issue I do want people... I'm curious what Charlie and Beth actually think about this, but the idea of reducing a calendar, but reducing the calendar to only the circuits that pay the most, i.e. sacrificing Monaco, sacrificing the UK, sacrificing Italy, and pretty much anything in Europe.
But where would the cut-off? How many would you sacrifice?
If we say, like, a real radical cut-off, we say 12 Grand Prix.
12?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If we say a real radical cut-off of 12, and only the top 12 pay, and you say we go to these obscure corners of the world, so the manufacturers involved are still happy because they still get to sell to these random markets in Vietnam and Singapore and whatever, and you just give it to whoever pays the most and whichever market wants it, ignoring the traditional F1 circuits. Would the Europeans necessarily stop watching Formula One? I mean, I know we've seen we've seen the viewer issues drop because they've gone to Sky, but Formula One still has a viewing, despite it being behind a massive paywall. People still, at least relatively, are interested in it in what should be its darkest hour. It's still getting millions of views, so why not just take the risk and make a massive overhaul?
So, go on, Charlie.
I think people can become quite blinkered about F1. You know, it is F1. I have to watch it every week, and I fall under that as well sometimes. You know, I can sit down at the beginning of a race and think, right, I know exactly who's going to win, I know exactly what's going to happen, and yet I have to watch it. I have to watch the whole thing, and I think a lot of people will be the same. It's that kind of, you know, it's not passion, because essentially you're watching it because you feel like you have to almost, but I don't think it would ever lose that. I think it's too rooted in history almost to lose those kind of hardcore fans, I guess, really.
It's a habit for many people. But,
yeah, absolutely.
But Beth, I mean, I'm presuming you were listening to what Connor was saying. Should F1 go down to just 12 of the best circuits, keep its exclusivity, not water things down, and just allow only the most oil-rich countries to dominate Formula One?
It's hard, as if you make... Maybe there should be a radical overhaul, but if you take away the manufacturers, what's it the pinnacle of? It's not going to be the pinnacle of technology. The best drivers can't get there because they don't have the money. So it wouldn't... It's not the best racing. Maybe it would be eventually if there were budget restraints and things, but it just makes you see what's the point in Formula One if...
Oh.
No, that's a good point. I agree.
It doesn't have... It can't claim to be the pinnacle.
I think the internet's defeating you at the moment, Beth, unfortunately, which is rather unfortunate. But Nigel, Beth did make an interesting point there. What is the point with Formula One? Maybe that's the name of a future Nigel Chew article.
Well, I will say Formula One is the one motorsport that will get new fans, will bring in new fans, new generations that will want to watch motorsport. I think all of us here, we love motorsport, we love watching motorsport because of Formula One. Formula One is what got us into it, and its history is arguably the best thing about it. And I don't want to say it's running on its history, but it is what's got us into it. And I think a small part of us will always love it, always keep an eye on it, even if we stop watching, like I will personally, because it is Formula One, because of everything that's happened, all the moments, all the races. So I've always said, no matter how bad it gets, I'll still watch Formula One because it's Formula One. I can't explain why. Even if the racing is awful, even if the team dominates, I'll always like Formula One.
Interesting theory.
Yeah, it's a much more eloquent way of saying what I was trying to say before, definitely. Yeah, well said.
Yes. Go on, Connor.
No, I was just saying, well, isn't that the point then? If you're going to watch it, no matter what it does, why not, break everything up? But
I suppose good point.
I see Beth's point. I do see Beth's point about if you have too many manufacturers leave, then you just leave. All of the monetary involvement goes, and there's no incentive for the drivers. In which case, you do go on a sort of a downhill spiral. So I do understand that.
Not necessarily.
And likewise, I think with your point about the tracks as well, the tracks that pay the most money are probably not going to be the ones that give us the best racing as well. So if it's not the best, you sort of defeat the object. Then you've got the shorter calendar, but then you've got the bad tracks anyway. So you've not got good racing. So.
Yeah. Maybe, who knows? But all of these things are kind of irrelevant points because they will never happen. You do know this. So
we can dream.
That is literally all we will be doing, definitely, because as much as we like F1, as much as some people, Nigel, might want to slag it off, they just admitted they will still watch it anyway, regardless. And as much as it is behind a paywall, just to use MotoGP as an example, people will still watch it anyway. And MotoGP is probably as big as it's ever been monetarily. Anyway, it seems to be doing pretty all right, considering that for large swathes of the world, it is behind a paywall. And it's not the 90s, and you won't find it back on the BBC anytime soon, I don't think. However, it is welcome on Motorsport Radio. I just want to point that out. As is the ABB FIA Formula E Championship as well, which the next round is at Monaco, coincidentally the same place that Formula One goes, albeit half the circuit anyway. But still, it's still great to see, and one of the only few comparison. Is it the only track that? No, I suppose Mexico.
It doesn't do the same circuit. Mexico is very much a different circuit in that sense.
Yeah.
I think there was plans to do a full Monaco. For reference, I'm trying to find any.
There was, but then it got a few months ago. They decided not to. Originally, it was, which is I don't know why they haven't, because with these new wider cars, don't get into it too much. We've already talked about Formula, but with these new wider cars, it could be a bit mad even in the drive because they've had the shorter Monaco circuit, which is going to use really tight, and. Yeah, it could be very interesting, to say the least.
Well, I'd like to see them at Macau, if nowhere else. Formula E, anyway. One place that probably could afford to host an event, but for obvious reasons, i.e., sensible people are at the helm of the ABB FIA Formula E Championship. They probably won't go to Macau. It would be a fantastic surprise if they did, and we would welcome that here at Motorsport Radio, the home of Formula E radio action. So anyway, so shall we just put Formula One to bed for 1 week? And we've actually not talked about any of the racing, which says a lot about the state of Formula One, I think. So Formula One action at Azerbaijan. We've run out of time, unfortunately, to discuss all the various ways in which it is broke and which we would like to fix it and which it would actually never work because they're all great ideas but would just never happen. That's basically it for 1 week, I think. Unless anybody else has any final pertinent points to make. Beth? Charlie? Nigel? Okay, fair enough. All right, so thank you very much then for all coming on the show. We've had so many people on the show that I've not even been able to fit onto the panel properly. So loads of great interactions. Thank you as well to everybody who has been on and messaged us via the internets, on Twitter, on Facebook. A couple of technical issues on my side, which are rare technical issues, which have prevented me from reading them. Literally, one more tab open in my browser, and the whole thing's just going to explode. There's going to be smoke everywhere. But it's all worth it just to have an extra person on the panel, Nigel, who's making his Motorsport Radio debut today. Hello, Nigel. Welcome. Indeed. Man of few words, unless they're written down. For now, anyway. Well, he claims to have lots of controversial opinions. We'll test him on that one. And also making her Motorsport Radio debut as well, Bethany Waring. Yeah, I'm just saying. Thank you for coming on. Charlie Andrews. They will learn to divulge their opinions in the same way that I know you do when we're sat in a media room, for example. Can never really shut her up. But anyway, thank you. Thank you for coming on tonight's show, Beth, and to Nigel Chu, who we have now conclusively verified is not actually Connor Jackson in disguise.
Still could be. No.
Well, that is true, actually. There is software. Yes, Charlie Andrews back on the show once again, and you're welcome to come back again in the future to tell us all the various ways in which we're wrong.
Maybe I've done an all right job of being a bit ranty then.
Well, it's kind of what the show is based around, people's opinions and rants, because we don't want to... I mean, how boring would it all be if we all agreed on how great or how bad things would be? Then we'd just be a podcast, wouldn't we? Tumbleweeds.
Calm down, Lester. Calm.
I know there are plenty of people who feature on the anyway, can I have my spade back now? Thank you. All right, so thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Lester, and we will do live shows again, I think, on Monday. Yes, as in Monday Motorsport. But if you're a fan of two-wheeled action, then don't worry, because the Superbike show returns on Thursday. I think, yes, this Thursday. And the only reason why we don't do it every single week is usually because we're out and not in the studio. We're busy setting up kit and equipment and that sort of thing for a live broadcast, as we were at the weekend, getting ready for the to broadcast live radio coverage of the home of the official biggest mini bikes championship probably anywhere in Europe, Cool Fab Racing, which is the hashtag Road to MotoGP. We had live coverage of that at the weekend. And also, as you may have known, we also had live ABB FIA Formula E Championship live radio at the weekend. I will get that name absolutely right eventually, so don't worry. But thank you anyway for tuning in, all one viewer. And we'll do it all again very shortly, very soon. Thank you and good night.
Monday Motorsport with Lester Forbes on Motorsport Radio.
Hi, it's Seb Ogier. This is Manuel Maldonado.
Hi, I'm Ash Sutton. Hi, I'm Michael O'Brien, and this is Motorsport Radio.